thing you gave me was time. You didn't really know me. We were from the same neighborhood and area, but I was with a group of guys that wanted to go to college, wanted to play ball, and you actually gave us that reality that, hey, this can actually happen, because we saw somebody that was like us and that we wanted to become.
Only thing that matters is you come out here, play after play after play after play, and that's the play for each other. That's what matters.
Recruiting is about relationships. It's built on trust. It's built on doing the right things, and it's built on your head coaches and your athletic director, their vision. And I think we have two great leaders, both of those positions. So it makes it easy for me to go out and do what I do.
Be aggressive. Let's win. Here we go.
President Myers, we'll jump right in. This has been really a rewarding experience for me, more so than many of the people who comment and who tell me about it. Because initially, I'll be quite honest, I didn't want to do it. You know, I'm a coach, and I'm not a reporter. But once Pat helped me to understand that this was a discussion, this is a discussion about leadership, to learn from leaders, man, I got, like I said, I got more than I bargained for. And it actually has continued to be that way as we've talked to head coaches, we've talked to athletic directors, we've talked to associate athletic directors, we've talked to people all over the spectrum. We've talked to people from search firms. We've talked to agents, and we're excited now to be able to talk to you, right? We're excited to be able to talk to you, someone who has been at the pinnacle of leadership, who 4-star Air Force General, 600 combat hours. I don't know if I could go through 1 hour of combat, but 600.
I think you do hours. On many Saturdays in the fall. I think you go through many hours of combat. Not to mention, so it's not unlike that.
and I'll take that. And who is now our president at Kansas State, newly announcing his retirement, and that saddens me as well as our K-State faithful. Because, of course, K-State is your alma mater. You're originally from Kansas, and I speak for all the proud Wildcats, as they say. We appreciate all that you've done at K-State, and that you will continue to do. We're not going to let you off the hook.
Right? I hope not. I hope people figure out ways to use me, because my passion for the institution, for the state of Kansas, for a lot of things that we do and stand for, I'd like to stay connected in whatever way people think is useful, and not be in the way of the next president, whoever he or she is, and that sort of stuff. But I got to tell you, when I first heard about you doing this, Coach Malone, I was really excited. I said, wow, this is really cool. And I imagine you did approach it with a little trepidation, saying, okay, is this really up my alley?
Right.
But you've just said it is up your alley, and I just think it's a terrific thing you do. I really think it's awesome, and I've been really looking forward to this.
Well, you know, and I can go on and on about the experience that I've had, but you know what I've been able to find out as we talk to leaders from different walks of life, that it's like my mom always said, when you hear different people saying the same thing, saying it in a different way, it must be right. It must be true. and that's what we've heard. That's what we've heard from the different leaders. So we'll jump right in. What I like for you to do, you know, in football, we have the Heisman Trophy, right? And so this Heisman Trophy, when you present that Heisman Trophy, that guy has highlights, right? And you go through his season, it has highlights. Well, let's look at your career as a highlight. And I'm let you put that highlight together. So take us from Ariel to today, you know, when you've decided that this is the end for you as the president of Kansas State.
Well, thank you for that, and I'll try to do this quickly because I know we have limited time. But I came to K-State wanting to be a veterinarian. That's why I chose K-State over, let's say, KU, where my rest of my family had gone up to that point. And then I decided at the last minute not to go into pre-vet, to go into engineering. And then they said, oh, by the way, you've got to go over to Ahern Fieldhouse and you've got to enroll in ROTC, because it was mandatory at the land-grant institutions when I came to school here in 1960, and for a couple more years after that. And I said, really? And I had never thought about the military. My family had not served in the military.
Wow.
So I went over, and there was a choice of Army and Air Force, and it came down to walk to war or fly to war. And I said, I think I'll fly to war. I mean, it wasn't a very sophisticated decision-making process. So I went into ROTC it was required for 2 years. There was no obligation at the end of that 2 years. You did not have to serve. So I never intended to take the junior and senior course. Never thought that would be a thing I'd do. Excuse me just a minute. And, but I liked it so much. I liked the folks I was studying with. I liked the cadre that was teaching us, the Air Force officers and enlisted. And so I took the junior and senior course, also as a hedge against the draft. Vietnam was raging. I didn't want to get drafted. I didn't mind serving, but going through ROTC, I thought I'd have more of a choice of when and where I might serve. And then they taught me to fly my senior year. So Coach Malone, I learned to fly out here at Manhattan Airport, where you guys fly out in and out of all the time, and in a little bitty airplane. And the first time we got airborne, I looked down, I said, wow, this is cool. And that, for me, it was one of those defining moments that I really love this.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us have those in life where, wow, I really love this. Coaching's probably that for you. At some point you said, wow, I really love this. So it's important to pay attention to those moments. And so I went in the military, still not thinking I'd make a career of it. And the highlight reel in the military would be that I got through pilot training in pretty good shape. I had a choice of weapon systems. I took an F4, get very far if I don't go to Vietnam, immediately volunteered for Vietnam, and went through some additional training, went to Vietnam, and I had 2 tours there, and both of them involved sort of special missions in the F4 where you were you're like a free safety. You're supposed to roam a lot of territory, and you take the action you thought was important at the time. And so I don't know if that describes a free safety very well, but
pretty close.
There was a lot more autonomy as I did that, and then that I got sent to a school, advanced school in aviation, fighter aviation, that only less than 10% of the pilots get to go to. So I knew at that point I was doing pretty well, I guess. And then they just kept promoting me. And my brother at the time was running a family business in Kansas City. And once they promoted me to general after about 23, 4 years in the military, he says, I guess you're not coming back. I kept saying, you just wait, I'll be back. You just wait.
Yeah.
And I served a 40-year career. I can tell you, and I think for young people, you never know where life's going to take you, right? So I just kind of followed my passion, and my passion was to stay in the military, to do those sorts of things. And after 40 years, I was able to rise to, as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which by law is the most senior person in the military.
And to me, my dad was in the military, so I knew, when I started to follow your career, I knew what that all meant. I knew what you being the president here at Kansas State, I knew the kind of person that I'd be around. And so even coming to have you on this podcast, you are, like I said earlier, you're the consummate leader, right?
I'm not sure. I don't know, Coach, but we all work
the guy that leaders lead. They want to lead like you. So as the president of a major university in 2020, and you and I, we experienced some of this together, there were quite the challenges. What would you, as you look back, what would you say 2020 did for you as a leader? Or maybe even how it really challenged you?
Yeah, I'll try to do both, but let me just reset just a second, because something you said earlier, leadership is leadership no matter where you are or what you're doing. And you don't even have to have a title or the responsibility of it. You can be a leader by your actions, by your values, by living out your values. You can have a title, president. They expect me to lead, right? But you're expected to lead on the football team. So then as you think about leadership, if you start studying it early, you learn that it applies across all these various disciplines. So coming to K-State, you mentioned 2020, 2021, a couple of things. We had the pandemic. And so I think we all, when we're in these challenging situations, you fall back on the rocks that have gotten you to the point you are. And I just mentioned some of them. Some of them are your personal values that you learned very early in life through family, church, schools you went to, your grade school teacher, your high school teacher, your coaches at that level. And then K-State, of course. I mean, I learned a lot here. People were very helpful here to get me through my mechanical engineering curriculum. I wasn't the greatest student in engineering, but I stuck with it. I persevered, and maybe that wasn't the right thing to do, but I just put my head down and said, I'm going to get through this. Mm-hmm. And they were very, very helpful across the campus. So they give you a confidence, I guess, to allow you to do and explore other things. So when it comes to the pandemic, you put the right people together. I think it's really important for leaders to listen. There's no one person that knows everything about everything. And so you need a lot of input these days to help you understand what's going on. So I like dissent when I'm talking. If people don't agree with what's being said or don't agree with me and kind of where I'm headed, speak up. That's why you're sitting here. Please speak up and let me know I'm maybe about ready to go off the rails. And I found that very helpful. So I think we've navigated, and you know this well because the football team did an excellent job of this and through the pandemic of navigating that. And I think we relied on the things that we always rely on. And then, of course, somewhere in there is personal responsibility. We all have responsibility for our own actions. But from a leadership perspective, that was that piece. And then the other piece that I'm sure you're referring to is that the whole social injustice issues that arose quite rapidly after the murder of George Floyd. And, again, you have to rely on what do you think is important in life? What are your values? And you take those and how do you guide an institution that wants to be the best we can be at taking care of our students, all our students, and make sure that all our students have the same shot at success, the same shot at graduation. And how do we make sure that happens and that they feel that they're included, that they're loved here? And how do we do that? So out of that, we listened to students, and I think people know we have a fairly aggressive 11-step action plan that kind of looks at all our policies, our procedures. Can we organize better to take care of our students and ensure, and faculty and staff too, for that matter, to make sure they have the best opportunity to succeed, which we owe them. That's our obligation. So I think the way you get through it is you have a good team. Mm-hmm. You get the team to help you, and then you set a course. And when you set a course, sometimes that course won't take you to where you want to go. You have to change course in the middle, say that wasn't quite right, this is better, and just keep trying to make it better. But that's how I did it, and you learn a lot. I mean, right. One of the reasons I stayed in the military was there was no tolerance for discrimination. It didn't mean it didn't happen in the military, but there was no tolerance. If people were discriminatory towards anybody or person, they didn't last long in the military. I like that. We're not that lucky here at K-State. We're a public institution. We got to put up with all types. And so trying to adjust to some people's point of views, which I clearly don't agree with, and how do we educate young students that this is a public institution, this is probably going to happen, but we don't have to tolerate it, and we can make sure that people that we deal with it in appropriate ways and educate people and try to get this community to be as inclusive as we can possibly make it.
Which I think the city of Manhattan, the state of Kansas for that matter, has shown to be a very inclusive environment. And during those moments, pandemic, social injustice moments, I really grew and respected your leadership during those times.
So yours too, Coach. Because we were all in this together. We're all trying to figure this out together, and it was important. Those were important moments, and I think the country's, for the most part, got it for the most part. I hope we can keep the momentum up because there needs to be continual change, trying to get better and better and better. Much like you do with your team. You want them to get better every day. Well,
Right.
we as a society have to get better every day.
Right.
And we can't take the pressure off of that, in my humble opinion.
Right. And I think you just made a great point, is that, we want to be the best version of ourselves that we can be. And sometimes it takes
Always. Yeah.
others to put that pressure on us. So let's talk about your staff. When you, over the years, when you've chosen people to get on the bus with you, what are some things that you look for when you are choosing the staff, when you're choosing the people that you want to work with?
Well, I think they're the obvious ones. You want people that are confident, but you would like to have people that have similar values. You can't say the same, I don't think, but similar values, whether it's an institution like K-State or whether it's a military organization. If you're bringing somebody on board, do you have the right values? I'll give you an example. The Joint Chiefs of Staff, we have all the different services represented: Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. Now it'll be Space Force and so forth, but all represented. And you hope they come to the Joint Staff with an open mind on providing policy guidance and all that and strategic planning for the force, the total force, not just the force they came from. So you'd hope that somebody like me, as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, I'm an Air Force officer, but if I start sounding like an Air Force officer in all my decisions, in fact, I told my vice chairman, it was a Marine General Pete Pace, I said, Pete, if you see me acting like an Air Force turkey, then you either correct me on the spot, or when we get back in the office, you take a 2x4 and hit me up the side of the head and say, you know how you sounded in there? Because I wanted to come across as I'm the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, not of the Air Force. It's everybody. And so I think that's one of the ways you need to look at those sorts of situations. And I'll tell you one other thing. You'll find this, I think, maybe even strange, but besides competence and being able to think more strategically, depending on the level of job you have, I'm reluctant to hire anybody that doesn't have a sense of humor. Because if you can't laugh at yourself or at something else, then there's something. I mean, life is serious. I got it, and we got to be really serious. But doesn't mean you can't show a sense of humor. And I think that when people show a sense of humor to some degree, maybe that indicates they can, especially if they're making fun of themselves, that could be a little humility showing through. I like to work. I don't think any of us tolerate arrogant people very well. So I'm looking for trying to determine, does this person think he's better than everybody else, or she thinks she's better than everybody else in this room? That kind of person's not going to have a very long line of followers. And I think throughout life, it's not going to be near as effective as it could be if they had a different approach.
Right. Which I would totally agree. One of the other leaders we've had on the podcast, he talked about the fact that leaders have to be vulnerable, and they have to allow people who work with them to know that they can be vulnerable as well. And nobody's perfect, right? And so when you can open up and as a leader and say, you know what, I'm not as good at this, or I'm not as good as that, then you allow people to do the same. You talked to us just a second ago about leadership being able to come. I read a lot of leadership books. One of the leadership books that I've read over the years is John Maxwell, I believe, 360-Degree Leader.
Right.
And there's a story in this book about a CEO who really got messaging from one of the janitors, one of the custodians in the building.
Exactly.
And so you think, like you said earlier, we all think that this person has to be the leader. And guess what? When the world looks at it, they may, because that guy has a title or that lady has a title, but really the leadership can be coming from a totally different place, one that you never expect.
And you better be open to that, right? You better. I was going in to give a class at leadership studies. When in the restroom, there was a janitor, a custodial guy in there. We just got to talking. I didn't have much time, but we just got to talking. And on the one hand, you look at him, you say, well, there's a custodial individual. And then on the other hand, you learn all he's done in life in terms of helping young people. Because he had a wonderful story, amazing story, that if you just kind of, and so you want his input. That's an input you need. I love it when I get stuff from some of the workers that are maybe not compensated as much as everybody else around here. Mm-hmm. I love those kind of inputs. They mean as much to me as getting something from Chuck Tabor or Provost or anybody else. They're just those comments are precious. And by the way, you see me around practice sometimes. I like to hear what if people will open up. If you can develop enough trust where they open up, I just like to hear what's on their minds. And sometimes they tell me things that are useful. I'll give you an example. I was talking to Mike McGurl a season and a half ago on the men's basketball team, and we were just chatting. And he said, the one thing that bugs me, when we have to take school off, sometimes our professors don't give us. They'll dock us points on an exam or on, participation if we have to go represent the university somewhere else. And I started talking around. Well, there are a lot of people that represent students, that represent university, so we came up with a new policy for our faculty to follow when people who are representing the university go off campus and can't make a test, can't make a class. And I know you deal with that all the time, but it wasn't right. And so Mike said, here's one of the things that bugs me. And I said, hey, I got it. And I ran with it. I wouldn't know that, if I didn't bump into people and they felt free to tell me about stuff.
Which I think, like we said earlier, is important that the leader allows that. There's a triangle. In coaching, we always talk about the triangle, right? Coach Kleiman and I talk about this all the time, is that when everything flies off the table, you don't know where to go next. Everyone is looking at the leader.
Yes.
They're watching the beads of sweat on your brow. They're watching you. And so it's at that moment that you have to gather yourself. You have to center yourself, because now the next move is based off of how you just reacted, to the way.
You brought up saying a word. If you're in a leadership position, people are watching everything you do.
Yeah.
Everything. There was a general once at a base that commented in the base paper trying to extol people or encourage people to wear seatbelts. Somebody wrote in the next week, and the next week's edition says, hey, Commander, you're supposed to wear seatbelts, but I noticed 6 months ago at Thanksgiving, you left the base exchange and you didn't buckle up. So you don't think people are watching you? Now, he was a 1-star. You don't think people are watching you, that you're not a hypocrite, that your words match your deeds?
Right.
That and the power it gives a leader is that just by doing things the right way on a daily basis. Military, making sure my shoes are signed, I'm wearing uniform correctly. As a squadron commander, if I got sloppy, I can guarantee you within a week, everybody looked like me. Hey, we're not getting haircuts anymore. I got a scruffy little face here. It's powerful for a leader to know that they're watching. And it's
well, you just made 6 points then.
I'm sorry.
because we, sometimes we struggle with pushing young men into their role, because when you're the leader, you think you have to be perfect, right? Because the one point is that you think you have to be perfect. The next point is that you are not perfect. So wait a minute, I don't need to be telling ABC to do ABC, because I know I am not perfect. I know I didn't do perfect, and I don't want them to come down on me when I'm, sometimes the leader is goody two-shoes guy.
I got it. Yep.
And so, but I think to be the leader, you have to understand, no, I'm not perfect. You have to understand that, but today I'm going to try to be. And today I'm going to do everything I can to do it the right way. And guess what? Yesterday I didn't wear my seatbelt, but that was a mistake. I'm honest enough with you to say that was a mistake. And moving forward, I want to wear my seatbelt. Moving forward, I want to do it the way it's supposed to be done.
We're not perfect, but we should always be striving for whatever our idea of perfection is.
Right.
Or to be our best. And so that's all people should expect. There's no human that I know that's ever been perfect.
Right.
Some have come pretty close, but that doesn't, you're not perfect. So you're always striving to get better and to correct your imperfections, because we all have them, right? We all have our blind spots and all this kind of stuff. We just got to get better at it. And I think the young students that you try to get into leadership roles understand that and understand they can really influence by just how they do business.
Right.
Just how they do it.
So you've been around some extraordinary leaders in your career. If you had to choose a couple, and I know it'll be difficult, but if you had to choose a couple of people who have really, from a leadership standpoint, been a big time influence on your life, who would those people be, and what did you learn from them?
So I think part of it is, kind of going back in history. So a lot of my military career, and by the way, I went to, in a 20-year career, most officers and for that matter, NCOs will spend a couple of years in education, not training, not learning how to fly a plane or drive a ship or any of that stuff, but education. And part of that education is always around leadership. And so you get to read things that maybe you wouldn't read otherwise. But so one of the guiding stars for me was General Eisenhower, then President Eisenhower. And the reason was he had a real degree of selflessness about him. He was seeing all his buds prior to World War II. As we entered World War II, he's seeing all his friends, Bradley and Patton, all his close associates, go forward to get these major commands in Europe. And he was told he was going to stay back and do strategic planning in Washington, because that's what he's really good at. And he didn't like that, but he said, okay, if that's what I'm really good at, if that's where the country needs me, that's what I'll do. Well, then eventually appointed to be the commander over everybody in Europe.
Right.
So you never know how it's going to turn out. But I think that sense of selfless service that I mentioned, or I think, so Eisenhower would be way up there. Right down the road, President Truman grew up in Independence, and he was real. He was just a real guy. And when he spoke, you could understand where he was coming from, and he wasn't afraid to make a decision. And think about the crises he had to handle in terms of coming out of World War II, getting into the Korean War, and dealing with generals that were pretty arrogant. But his actions were, I thought, were really, 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 really good. So those would be a couple. In the military, you just learn, you pick out, and I think for young people, you pick out the people you admire, the way they go about their business. And I even took notes when I was a young lieutenant. I would take notes. That officer, that squadron commander is really good. Here's what he does that I think is really good. I took notes on the ones I didn't like. And there was one I did not like. Most of us lieutenants didn't like him. And we took notes on, if I ever get to be a squadron commander, I'm not going to do it that way. And I still have those notes today. I'm just not going to do that, because it was, and he turned out not to turn out, he didn't go as far as he could have, just by his own character. But which goes, so those, I think your heroes are where you find them. Find the folks you really admire the way they do their business, and pick those things off for yourself. Say, yeah, I'd like to be more like that.
All right. So this is the last question, and this is always a cool question for some people, and some people it's a little bit challenging. But if you could go back and you could talk to your younger self, what would you say to that young man to help him be better at that stage?
So I think so through high school, I thought things, I probably wouldn't change a lot of that. I thought I was paying attention to, I did a lot of sports and that sort of stuff. That at least at the formal level stopped when I got to the university. But I think I'd try to be more disciplined with my time utilization. So that'd be one thing I'd talk to myself about. And then as I got into the Air Force, as I mentioned, the highlight reel for me in my first 10 years would be pretty good. I mean, not, pretty decent. When my father died, after I'd been in the military about 10 years, I found out I had another gear. And I can't explain this, Coach. I do not know why it was this way, but my dad died, I said, I don't know if he's going to be able to watch me from where he's going, and my mom has passed then as well. I said, I need to be as good as I can possibly be. And I, in my own trajectory in the Air Force, changed because I just tried to be the best I could be at everything they gave me to do and every opportunity. And I found out, I thought I was doing that already, but I found out I had another gear. Yeah. And maybe and when I came here, you can't rest on your laurels. Yeah, I've got a lot of leadership abilities. I've been at very high levels, but this is a different situation. This is a different culture, and you got to learn how to fit in. And I had to find another gear for Kansas State University. It was easy because this has been such a privilege and honor, but so I think we can always do more than we think we can. Some psychologists could tell me when my dad died why I reacted the way I did, but I can remember that, talking to myself saying, okay, Myers, you got to kick it up a notch. There's no reason for you to be second at anything.
Yeah.
You're going to be first.
Yeah.
And not in an arrogant way, but just in a self-motivational way to make sure that I was giving everybody around me, all of me, to get the job done.
Yeah. And I think that's amazing and cool for you to have that moment. I think what you said earlier is that sometimes when we're young, we think we're doing it. We think we're doing it, but maybe somewhere in there, if you really, and I always challenge our players, I'll ask them I'll ask them the first time, did you do your best? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Okay. Did you do this? What about that?
Yeah.
You can start to see, well, if you start to examine your operation on your own, you can see the ways you could be better. You could see the ways you could do better in your classes. You could study your opponent better. You could practice harder.
Yeah.
The game is always fun, but it's those other moments that people sometimes don't do their best.
Yeah, we always hear that, at least I hear anyway, that the people that really excel, let's say at football, they spend a lot of time studying the game, studying their opponents, and kind of getting that in the back of their mind, so they know a little bit what to expect. So when they're trying to make a split decision, they make it the right way, and it doesn't always work out. But I think that's true of life. Just kind of studying everything you can to, when you finally get on the field. And for me, my field's different, but when you get on the field, you want to be able to react to what's around you, and that takes study. I'm getting ready to go to a Board of Regents meeting tomorrow. And we had a 2-hour session today, getting me ready, right? People that know a lot better than me, getting me ready. Because when I go down there, I want to be as good as I can be in front of the Board of Regents in terms of representing K-State University. And I get a funny feeling in my stomach about that. I can do this, I know that, but don't just do it. I want to be good at it. Really good. And anyway.
Well, I'm sure you will. You always have. Yeah, you always have. So I'm excited to hear that you tore it up. In a good way. President Myers, I really appreciate your time. And like I said, it's just see you later, right? You're not going anywhere. So
now, about that, it's bittersweet with me too. And when we're together privately, I'll tell you some of the things I was thinking about. But I want to do what's best for the university. But it is bittersweet leaving. I love K-State. I love our students, our faculty, our staff. We've got a really good culture here, I believe. Really good folks. And I hate not to be as close to it as likely going to happen in next year. So to me, it's bittersweet, and doesn't come easy. And I can get emotional if I think about it too long, because this means a lot to all of us. But anyway, thank you for those comments.
Well, thank you again for having the time with us, and want you to have a great day. And like I said, go tear it up at that.
I'll keep that in mind. I'll use the tear it up. That's good. I mean, it means something to your players. It means something to me now. I'm going to go tear it up.
Yeah,
Tuesday and Wednesday down there in Lenexa, Kansas. And Coach Malone, I can't thank you enough for doing this. This is, I think, really important for lots of people. I don't know who will see it or what they'll think of it, but as they go through life, to have the ability to look at different intersections of views and figure out what's meaningful to them, I think that's a really important service for our student athletes and others that might see this. So
the funny thing is that I've gotten comments and responses from people across the spectrum, from student athletes to people who had nothing to do with sports, to coaches, to athletic directors, across the board. And so, I just, sometimes you do things, again, like we said earlier, you do things that you think they're going to come across one way. You have a plan for it to go this way, and it goes a totally different way. So I feel like I've been really blessed to have this opportunity, because I've learned more than I ever thought I would. And to have the experience has been really cool for me. But I know if it's helping someone else, well, that just takes
that's the big deal. That's the big deal. Yeah. Well, you showed a lot of courage just to do it, because it wasn't in your comfort zone, as you said earlier. You did it. And I get put in those kind of positions all the time around here, and you just got to go do it. And that's where you learn the most too, by the way. So get out there, get out of your comfort zone, participate, and good things will happen.